Okay, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our monthly Recovery Cafe volunteer training. I'm Brian, I'm the program manager. It's nice to see you all. Thank you for being here. We do this every month, and there are several, purposes or goals behind it. One is for our Recovery Cafe community to build community. I would love for our volunteers to get to know who each other are, and then maybe you'll find some support through your recovery in that way. Another purpose for this is to learn new skills or practice skills that support our recovery and the recovery of other people who come here to Recovery Cafe. And the third is to get an understanding of some local resources. So in the past, we've invited local practitioners and other professionals in the behavioral health field to come and present about a topic and then also share about their position in the community so that we can make that connection, which makes us better at supporting members' recoveries because we can make better referrals if we know where to send folks. So what I'd like to do to start is just do a description of Recovery Cafe for those who maybe this is their first video that they watch. And then because we have a small enough group, I would love to hear from whoever would like to share maybe a brief introduction. So I'll prompt you when we come around to it. But Recovery Cafe, this is a community of people who are in recovery from all of the above. In fact, we believe everybody's in recovery from something. And our purpose here is to build community. We are hoping that this is a safe place for people to make connections with one another and to focus on whatever growth that they need to sustain their recovery. We are not here to fix anybody else. We're not here to tell anybody what they should and shouldn't be doing. We are not treatment and we're not 12-step groups. We support all pathways to recovery, whichever pathway makes most sense for somebody. And we are here to hopefully be an additional support to folks. We're not here to be the end-all be-all of someone's recovery, nor supplant any other of the wonderful services that exist in our community. Some of the ways that people can engage with Recovery Cafe, we have two main roles. One is membership. Members commit to 24 hours drug and alcohol free when they participate in the cafe. They also commit to attending one recovery circle per week. And the third is they commit to giving back to the cafe community in some way. There's lots of opportunities to give back, which could include helping clean up when we have our meal service, maybe helping in the kitchen, things like that. So that's the member role. And then the folks who are here are interested, of course, in this volunteer training in the volunteer role. Now, when you walk into the space, you probably wouldn't be able to tell the difference between a member and a volunteer, and this is purposeful. We want to reduce the power dynamics, I guess, that exist in all of our society, I suppose. And that's why we have that inclusive language of everybody's in recovery from something. So even though I, as a volunteer, am coming to help out in this space, I have to be very careful about my intentions here. I'm also coming for myself. I'm also coming because I feel good when I'm here. I feel supported while I'm here. Thanks for that reminder, Thais, to mute your microphone if you're not speaking. Thanks for that. So the difference then between a member and a volunteer is that volunteers do not make a commitment to attending a recovery circle. What volunteers do is 24 hours drug and alcohol free when they come and giving back to the Recovery Cafe. We have volunteers fill a few different roles. One is cafe companion role, which is what we're going to be talking about today. Another is kitchen assistants. And then another is kind of special projects or as needed things. I do have some people helping with administrative data entry things. I have some who are kind of handyman, fixer-upper sort of folks, so they'll do those kind of projects. But the two main roles are cafe companion and kitchen assistants. So I guess with that, I would love to open it to introductions for the folks who are here. I'd love to just hear your name, and then I would love to hear your interest in or experience as being a cafe companion. So it's just your name and basically what brought you to a training about a cafe companion role. And if I could call on folks, because that makes it a little bit easier, can I have, let's see, could I have Jan go and then Jill go? And then I'll give more direction after that.
Okay, I'm Jan, and I originally read about the cafe in the paper and made a connection happily in time to get the 4-day coaching training a couple of years ago now, and have been a member of a recovery circle for that long since then. So long before the cafe opened, we had a Zoom meeting and have gotten to be super close, and it's just felt like such a support to me. We also, once the cafe opened, have been meeting at times and kind of intermittently at the cafe on Thursday afternoons or Friday mornings are usually the ones that I go to. And I've always been just kind of mystified about what I'm there for, although, you know, it is, it's just a super great place to be, wonderful people, wonderful staff. It's just a lovely time to very casually sit and be with people who are in recovery, or, you know, for whatever reason. So it's, but I'm happy to be here so that I can hear what my jobs really are while I'm there, and how I can be helpful while I'm there, rather than just share time with my good friends. So thanks, Brian.
Thank you, Jan. And so how about we have Jill, then Carol?
I also took the training, was January, a year and a half ago, I think. I had been working at Dove House, just doing kind of backroom stuff, and also other things, taking things to Goodwill. I'm just not a backroom person. I'm very social. And when I heard about Recovery Cafe, I was so excited and signed up for the training, loved the training. And then I was horrified that we weren't opening. I'm a nurse, that's my background. I probably did that for 15 years or longer. I'm just social. I love to help people. So I'm slowly getting to know people who come in, and hoping they'll open up and we can talk about what issues they're having. So far, I've only sort of worked with one person, and it wasn't even an addiction thing. But that's my goal. I want to really start doing it.
Thank you, Jill. So if we could have Carol and then Kathy.
Oh, can't hear you.
I've enjoyed all the training, and I think that Recovery Cafe has taught us how to be together on Zoom when we don't have a lot of choice, and we may be sliding back into that again. I have not been a very good volunteer. I'm a caregiver at home. That's my job, and so I haven't been a great volunteer, but I'm in a recovery circle. It's been almost 3 months, and it's coming together very, very nicely. I'm really looking forward. I would love to get my booster and come and start hanging out. And I've been a bit remiss about getting my food handler's card, so that's got to be on my to-do list. Because I do love kitchens, particularly that one. It would be, there's lots of possibilities for fun in that kitchen when the time comes. Thank you.
Thanks, Carol. Glad you're here. And if we could have Kathy, and then the rest of the folks don't have their camera on, so I'm going to let you decide when to jump in after Kathy is finished.
I'm Kathy, and I've been coming to the trainings, I guess, since January. I have not come to the cafe for whatever reasons. A lot of it has to do with COVID and family members and, people at risk. So I pretty much just shown up for these Zoom meetings, which I've really appreciated. I've learned a whole lot about this. I found out about the cafe through the newspaper, as well as through a couple of other friends who were volunteering and working with you guys before the cafe actually opened. And they were really encouraging. I'm also in recovery, so anything that has to do with kind of giving back what I've received over the years has been really important to me. And I've been really curious too, because I don't know what happens, when you walk into the cafe. If, I'm sure you can just, go up and say hi to maybe faces that I see here. And, but after that is kind of, it's just a blank for me. And it's not like I'm really intimidated about it. It's just that I haven't brought myself to do it. I know Holly and I had talked about several times about getting together and going together because she was a little intimidated as well. And yet we have no reason to be intimidated because you guys have all been great. And, and I'm curious you talked about as a member being required to attend, one recovery circle a month or a week or whatever that is. As a volunteer, are we welcome to those recovery circles?
That is a great question, and it will be part of the training, so I will get to
Oh, okay.
that. Yeah,
Great,
thank you,
great. I guess that's probably it. I guess one more thing. At one of the trainings recently, we talked about, I don't know whether it was a workshop or whether it was just another volunteer that was putting together, I don't know whether it was an art program or music or whatever. And it sounded like that you had a calendar of events. And I was just curious as how would I find out what that calendar is?
Sure. We have a calendar on our website. As far as upcoming events, we don't have a lot. Once the new public health order went out that required proof of vaccination to come to the cafe, we sort of put a pause on any new offerings. Previously, we had been doing open mic nights outside, and it did feel safe. And at the same time, we were taking this as an opportunity to kind of pause a bit and make sure that we are kind of holding our members in their recovery, keeping the space safe, So that's a long-winded answer to say we do still have a writing group for our members that continued, as well as it's a spirituality discussion group that meets on Wednesdays as well. So you can find those things on our website. If you scroll down, there's a calendar on the bottom.
And they're just open to anybody?
The writing group would be, you'd have to enroll in that one. The spirituality group is open for drop-ins.
Okay, great. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Hi, hi, I'm Thais, and I'm in a very similar situation as Kathy. I've never really been in the cafe, but although I knew about the cafe because I used to use that commercial kitchen, Candace's Kitchen before, so I was there since the very beginning, when it was bought anyways. So I've been hearing about it, and then I've been on most of the trainings too online, but I haven't been shy. I haven't been to the cafe yet. So for me, I'm not really intimidated, but I think I was just not ready yet to be out there. It's more like, I don't know if I was ready to contribute and be a support. So I feel like I am now, and I'm very excited to be able to volunteer there as a cafe companion. So that's why I'm here.
Thank you, Thais.
I'm Charlotte, and I don't like to be on video. And I've been to several of the trainings and really interested in Recovery Cafe. I'd like to support it and want to know more about these groups and how I can contribute. I pretty much too have been staying home with COVID, but am ready to figure out what I can do, even though COVID is kind of we're seeing that again. But I think there's something I can do. I just want to figure out what that is. And then I have Judy with me.
Hi, I'm Judy, and I'm like Charlotte, sort of. And I'm also like Kathy, and I kind of don't know what to do either, but I really think it's a wonderful, wonderful thing, the Recovery Cafe, and I was glad to see it go into that. It used to be a gas station and a little grocery store. Because I graduated from high school here. Well, I was born here and then graduated from high school here. So I've seen a lot of changes, and this has really been a very positive change. But with COVID falling on us like it has, I'm a little hesitant about getting out in public and, doing too much. But I really would like to be a part of it. So this is my first time here to see about this.
Thank you both. Glad you're joining us today.
Well, hi, I'm Bruce, and I guess for starters, I am a person in long-term recovery from a substance use disorder, like decades, most of my life, fortunately. I've been involved with the Recovery Cafe in Seattle, or was involved with them for many years, almost from the beginning, both as a donor and as a volunteer. And well, during COVID, I used to go there on Saturdays, and that went away, and I really, really missed it. I last year moved to Whidbey Island, and so this is the closest Recovery Cafe. So it's the natural one for me to come to. I have also, so I have been there as a cafe companion. I did volunteered in a similar role at the Seattle Cafe. I also have done other stuff. I built the website for the cafe. I've done graphic design and other odds and ends. And so it's been good it was good to get back in, seeing people in person for sure. And I hope to be there on Thursday this week to do that again.
Looking forward to having you, Bruce.
Yeah.
And we have one more person I'm seeing who doesn't have their screen on, and that's fine. But I want to give you a minute if you would like
A
to
little different, value
introduce yourself.
to it to protect other people's rights and not just win cases and.
All right, sounds like they're maybe on the phone or something. That's okay. So then, thank you all so much for that. That's helpful to me to know kind of where to begin our training, to know sort of where everybody's at with it. So I guess for the sake of some of our new folks and for the sake of those who may be watching this as their first video, I'm just going to take a step us back right from the beginning, which is to talk about Recovery Cafe, our guiding principles, the goals of the program, and then we can get into our volunteer roles here. So every day when we open Recovery Cafe for meal service, which is on Thursdays from noon to 3 and Fridays from 10 to noon, every day we start our day with a sort of ritual. The ritual involves making announcements about some of the upcoming happenings at Recovery Cafe, some of the things that Kathy was asking about, what classes or opportunities are there for members, upcoming events, things like that. And we also recite our guiding principles each time and describe the purpose of the program and our intentions for being in the space. So our guiding principles are, so the preamble is to create a safe community in which all are valued. We strive to connect with divine love in ourselves and others, show respect, cultivate compassion, practice forgiveness, encourage growth, and give back. You don't have to memorize those. There won't be a quiz. We've got them posted up here. Much of the material I'll be sharing with you actually is in a volunteer manual that I will send to you all after the training and peruse at your leisure. The guiding principles are there to inform every aspect of cafe life. They guide our decision making and help us to maintain a culture of healing and hope. As we've been going through COVID, we've only been open during the pandemic. We've encountered lots of challenges. I mean, we have the typical challenges you might expect of different kinds of people interacting with one another, different ideas about recovery and all these things, and then there's also the larger context of the pandemic. So I'm just providing this example, right, of like, let's make the implicit explicit, which is to say, the vaccine order has been controversial for some. There are those who have very strong feelings about it, one way or the other. I have my own feelings about it, right? We all do. And it's an opportunity to lean into the guiding principles. This is how I framed it here at the cafe, at least, right? How do we cultivate compassion? How do we show respect? It's become a very divisive, politicized, emotionally laden subject. But what I like to focus on are what are the things that are connecting us? How do we continue to build community? How do we encourage growth in one another when something so fraught is currently happening? So there's not a clean answer, and that's why these are principles, guidelines, values, things that we're striving toward. There's a lot of wind right now, so if we lose power, I apologize, but we'll just push forward. So we encourage all of our volunteers, including yourselves, to help us hold these guiding principles here in the cafe. Nobody is perfect, right? But this is why we say we're striving toward these values. So some of the goals of the cafe. As I said at the beginning, Recovery Cafe is a community of people, and we're there to support each other's recovery journeys. The focuses, the goals are to develop positive, encouraging relationships. We have members who will participate in recovery circles. We'll grow in our recovery through groups and classes that address core issues of recovery. We'll give back through volunteer service. We will nurture spiritual growth through daily silence and meditation. That is a part of our ritual in the mornings, or the beginning of our meal service, to hold some silence together and reflect or use that time for whatever you'd like. And then another goal of the cafe is to share our gifts and talents with one another by giving back, and hopefully at some classes and open mics and things like that, we'll really get to see some people's talents shine. So those are some of the goals. I do think it's important also to define recovery. That word means a lot of things to a lot of different people. So here's how we use that term. We believe that to be human is to be on a journey of change, growth, and healing. This view recognizes that all members of the community, including staff and volunteers, are on a recovery journey from whatever it is that keeps us from being our best, truest selves. For a lot of our members, they have significant challenges to the recovery process, which include alcohol issues, substance use issues, mental health, homelessness, trauma histories, or a combination of all those things. We want members to define their own experience, and we've adopted this mantra that says, you are in recovery if and when you say you are. I'm not here to impose my views of recovery onto anybody else. Another thing that we follow is it's called the Substance Abuse Mental Health Services Administration. This is a federal bureaucracy. Their definition of recovery says it's a process of change through which individuals improve their health and wellness, live a self-directed life, and strive to reach their full potential. So you notice in those two definitions, we don't specify what are people in recovery from, because they get to define that for themselves. And they get to say what it is that means to them. What does that word recovery mean to them? For some people, it might mean abstinence from substance use. So part of this is shifting culture. It's shifting the way that we view behavioral health issues. from a kind of pathological deficit-based thinking, as in there's something wrong with this individual, and in order for them to get better, they better stop now or they will die from their substance use, right? This has kind of been the focus, and it's still, some people still hold that true. I'm not here to debate that. What I'm here to say is we prefer to look at folks a little more holistically here at Recovery Cafe. It is very true for some people that if they do not discontinue their substance use, they very likely could die. So that can be true, and it can be true that there are many other issues that someone is working on in their recovery that we want to honor just as well. Or if someone has made a decision that says, I want to reduce my substance use, I will support that, because to us, we view this as a person striving toward their full potential. It's not for me to define what that is. So I want to get down to, I am looking at our volunteer manual. There's a few different sections of it, right? But before I get into the specific role of a cafe companion, I just want to talk about community volunteers in general. So the role of the volunteer in the Recovery Cafe, it's crucial. We only have 3 staff here at Recovery Cafe Jefferson County. There's myself, Marissa, and Tracy. Now, I think the world of Marissa and Tracy. They're fantastic. And we can't do this place, we can't operate this program without volunteer help. So volunteers provide significant support to cafe staff, to our members. It's an integral part of our community here at Recovery Cafe. What we hope is that this is a nurturing place where we are focusing on the things that we hold in common across all of these, all the diversities of identities or socioeconomic status, you know, race, religion, all of those things. We're looking for the commonalities. So what we would love for volunteers to do is, of course, uphold those guiding principles, to support staff in doing so. And I guess having a sense of like, where's the lane? What lane am I in? And where does that line begin and end? I do not ask volunteers to monitor the front door to see if someone is behaving appropriately or not. I don't ask them to do that. I don't ask volunteers to check people's vaccine card. I don't think that's right to ask volunteers to do that. So we do need volunteers, of course, to help us maintain a certain culture, and that's what Cafe Companions do. But what I'm not going to ask volunteers to do are enforce cafe rules or policies or things like that. I do love when our volunteers are there to greet new members. It's really helpful to have somebody besides staff to come in and help them to feel welcome. Show them around, introduce yourself, tell them about the cafe and why you like being there, your experience with it, or what levels you've engaged with it. So I do want to get into the role of a cafe companion, but I want to stop for a second and ask for any questions or feedback about what, just like a general, the community volunteer role versus a member role. Does this feel clear to folks? Any questions on the differences?
Is it basically that the members are meeting in a recovery circle and the volunteers are not necessarily doing that?
Yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah. Part of this program is empowering peer leadership. And a peer leader could be a member, a peer leader could be a volunteer. When we go back to all those principles that I was describing earlier about our beliefs about how we view people, how we approach people, that means that both members and volunteers can greet people at the front door, can help us uphold our guiding principles, have strengths and talents and gifts to offer to be leaders in this place, right? So yes, the main difference is, do you want to commit to attending a recovery circle or not?
Mm-hmm.
I would say that for those who are empowered into higher and higher levels of peer leadership also comes with more responsibility and more accountability for how we hold this space. Does that make sense? So I'd say staff has the highest responsibility for making this a safe place, for making sure we hold very good boundaries with people, that we communicate very clearly what the expectations are. I would say volunteers who have been empowered into leadership roles such as a recovery circle facilitator or helping us run the kitchen or a cafe companion role, I would say there is a higher level of accountability there than the new member who walked in the door. For members who have been here for a very long time, and we have also empowered them into some of those same roles, as in a facilitator or really someone who's been in recovery circles for a year or 2 years, I do expect a little bit more of that person than the person who's walking into the front door. Does that make sense? Cool, okay.
I just want to make
Yeah.
one little comment that, there's a lot of, concepts and things you've thrown out already, but I think the fundamental operating model I have in my head from my experience volunteering especially at the Seattle Cafe, is simple. It's about meeting people where they're at and loving them. And that's the thing I really try and keep in mind. And from that, all the other things that Brian talked about, for me, they grow out of that foundation. So just a thought.
Thank you, Bruce. That is it in a nutshell for me too. That's beautiful.
Thank you, Bruce.
Yeah, and it is true. I ran into it, especially in the Seattle Cafe, that not, some of the people, some of the members and volunteers too, have not experienced that in their, they go places and the power relationship is just very different. And, they get this very cynical attitude and then start seeing people waking up that, oh, this place is different. And I'm not being, they're not telling me what to do. They're not, whatever it is. And that really, it's really cool to see people grasp that and make that switch and realize that, hey, this can be different for me. And also having the backdrop of like professional staff and other things, that when things, and I'm sure we'll talk about this, but if we get into a place where it's beyond our skills and whatnot, there are people there that have those skills, and they're, but it's very invitational. It, has been my experience. It's not, unless there's, I guess I do remember at the Seattle Cafe a couple of times where there's, some, actual safety issue came up, and sometime, that again takes having solid boundaries. But at the bottom line, it's still remembering we're meeting people where they're at and loving them, even when they're maybe at their worst, because that's something they've probably never experienced. Or maybe, I don't know. Anyway, there you go.
Well said, Bruce. Thank you. So I'm going to go down. It's quite a bullet list of what it means to serve as a cafe companion. So bear with me, but I will be sending this out so you can refer back to it. But in addition to the things that we've described and what Bruce contributed to as well, what I'd say about the cafe companion role is that you're there to foster positive and healthy communication within Recovery Cafe. Your goal is to be a focused presence, a loving influence, as Bruce talked about, in the lives of our cafe members. And we do ask for some kind of commitment. So members commit to attending a recovery circle once per week. But we ask, if you want to sign up as a community volunteer, if you want to be a cafe companion, consistency is crucial. It's important for our members. It's important for us to create a sense of safety. We need to know that people are going to be consistent. So I've not just divulged all the, details of my life with you, and then I don't see you for forever, right? Now, I don't expect you to be there every single time, but if we have some sort of consistency, let's say it's every other week, it's once a month, and then communicating that with the folks that you're sitting with. Yep, I come here the third Thursday of the month, or whatever, and then following through on that commitment. That helps people to feel safe when people follow through on what they say they're going to do. So Cafe Companions, our number one job is listening. We're offering a listening ear to our cafe members. We're there to engage in conversation, to sit and share a meal with someone. That's a great engagement tool to share that meal together. Really, at the heart of what this community is it is building relationships, and the way that we do that is by listening to folks. We believe that healing comes through people being attentive to each other, believing each other. So here's some things that we're going to ask of Cafe Companions, thinking about how to be a good listener. So first, as we're listening, be present to yourself. Know, where am I at today? Are you not feeling well? Are you uncomfortable? Has something happened in your life that's been really hard for you to deal with? This is the number one thing that I learned from, I got a degree in social work, and what I realized going through it was half of this work is my work. It's the stuff that I've got to do on myself, so that when I show up for somebody, I'm not getting in the way, or I'm not letting my stuff get in the way of being present with that person. We don't have to be superheroes. We're not here to rescue anybody. We are just people like anybody else. We've all got gifts and strengths and things to offer. And the main thing is being a loving presence, like Bruce spoke to. So we do that by showing up and by listening. So having a sense of, am I ready to do that today? Can I hold my stuff aside while I listen to this person? Maybe I'm the one who needs to be listened to today. And so I'll go seek that out with someone that I've come to trust here. And that's great. That is all being in community with other people. So what I would say, especially if you're feeling a certain kind of way when you come in for your shift, check in with staff. Come find me, find Marissa, find Tracy, and let us know that's kind of where you're at today. And we will treat you the same way we treat all of our members, which is to say, wow, thank you for telling me. Do you want to tell me more about that? And if today is not the day to be in the cafe, that is fine. And we can come back again the next time. So some of these things I'm about to describe to you are some of the boundaries I'm going to ask you to hold in the cafe. I would encourage you to limit exchanging contact information with members, meaning your address, your phone number, email, that kind of thing. I will not say definitively, you must never do that. But what I would say is, especially when you're first getting to know somebody, we're not going to disclose that. A lot of our members are working on having healthy boundaries. And so because you're in this trusted role, the expectation is that you are the one to hold the boundary until and unless the member develops those skills to also hold that boundary. So some ways that I've approached that when members ask, like, oh, so do you live nearby? Or yeah, where do you live, Brian? And I kind of deflect and I'll say, I live nearby, I'm about 15 minutes away, that still could be anywhere. But a lot of those questions are not actually asking, where's your house? It's an effort to connect. It's an effort to get to know you, It's an opportunity for us to have a little bit of self-disclosure. I guess so one of the things I think a lot about the Cafe Companion role is it's very different from a lot of the past jobs I've had in social work. As a counselor, the boundaries are very rigid. That's what I used to do. I was a counselor. And you are not supposed to disclose very much about yourself for good reasons. And here at the cafe, we get to bring more of ourselves to the role. And that's great. And there are still those boundaries that we need to hold. So I try to be a bit of a human. I try not to be a robot, so when someone asks me, hey, where do you live? A counselor might say, oh, it's interesting that you're interested in that, and then deflect to something else, I might say, oh yeah, I live nearby and I've been in town for a few years and I love this place. Here's what I like about it. What do you like about it? And that's our opportunity to connect when asked questions like that. Questions about contact information and the boundaries on that. I'd love to hear if anybody has any questions. Okay. I would also say,
Brian, can I
yes.
just say something? One of the things that I've really appreciated about you and the whole that consideration of not sharing, like keeping healthy boundaries, is that you never, if I ask for somebody's information, even somebody precious from my circle, you never ever just give that information. You always set us up as, this is, Jan would like to do this, and here's her information, and if you want to contact her, you can feel free to do so. But you never give out any of our information just without that point, which I think keeps us all feeling very.
Yeah, thank you for that, Jen. And that's a great point, and I would encourage all of you guys to do the same. It happens all the time here where someone will meet another person at the cafe and say, I just don't know how to get in touch with them. Can you give me their email or their phone number or something like that? Well, we don't do that. We don't give out other people's contact information. But just as Jan suggested, something I have done is I'd say, oh, if you're interested in getting in touch with them, why don't you give me your email? If I see them, I'll give it to them and then they can contact you. This is another thing that I would say you as community volunteers are not expected to do. And you can have staff intervene and help connect members if that's something that they want to do. Okay, some other guidelines or boundaries, I'd say we prefer that volunteers meet with members in the main cafe space. We would discourage anybody from meeting one-on-one, like in the conference room or in a private space. I think it helps us all feel safe just knowing it's a public space and there's not something happening in that one-on-one conversation that shouldn't be happening. We would say to be aware of the impact of touch during COVID. That's pretty simple. Please be 6 feet away from each other. And you may come to develop a really strong relationship with either another volunteer or another member. And some of our members like to hug and some of them like to shake hands or pat on the back or whatever. But I think if you notice how I said that, that's someone that you've gotten to know over time. That's someone where we've asked for consent for something like that, or or they've asked us, right? Especially if it's somebody new, we've got to be really careful. We don't know what someone's trauma history is. We don't know the impact that might have on them. I have learned generally when being in the space as well, not to approach someone from behind if they can't see me. I'll stand back and wait for them to turn, or I will kind of give a wide berth and walk slowly and calmly, and to keep my voice at a low-ish level, an indoor speaking level, because I've had the experience of people becoming alarmed or upset because I didn't think anything of it and I just approached them and I happened to be from behind them, and that doesn't feel safe for a lot of people. Some other guidelines, I'd say be aware of the impact of your appearance. This has not really been an issue here in the cafe, but I would say, I don't know, just be mindful about any messages that we may be giving somebody that we don't intend to. The guidelines that they give us from the manual from the Recovery Cafe in Seattle is, mostly stuff like in the summer, so short skirts, see-through tops, things like that. It's a distraction to what we're trying to do here. I don't want to police what people wear. It's not the job I want to have. So just be mindful of, as much as we are trying to reduce power dynamics, they do exist. I hold more power here than all of our members and probably most of our volunteers, just because of the positionality of being the program manager. You as community volunteers, again, have more accountability for holding these kinds of things than our members do. So let's be aware of how we're coming across. It has happened frequently, especially with our female staff, where that's part of my orientation with them, is to let them know the population, some of the folks who come here are working on boundaries, and they may say things that are inappropriate. And so we work through how do we navigate that in the most loving way possible? You know, how do we let someone know, I know your intention is good, and here's the impact that it's having. So here's what I would prefer to see going forward. Anyway, that's what I'll say about that. How it's written here is it says, refrain from giving money. I'm going to be very clear and say, never give money at the cafe. Absolutely never. Members will say, oh, I just need a couple bucks for laundry. I just need to catch the bus, you know. It is so tempting because it seems like an easy fix to that person's current problem, you know. But it, again, sets up a power dynamic that we find counterproductive. There are resources that exist to help folks with things like that. And if you haven't already gotten to know them, just refer them to staff or bring them on up to staff or call us over or something. We can help that person get their needs met. And in a way that if the cafe doesn't exist, if the cafe has to close because of the pandemic, whatever, right? that person can still get their needs met. It's not just on me, it's not just on you. That's a situation we don't want to put ourselves in. I would say, okay, so this next one is again more about the philosophy and how we're listening to folks. We will develop these skills. Some of you are already very skilled at it, but listening skillfully and empathically. A lot of our members have values and views that are very different from yours. Being a cafe companion, though, requires us to have an open mind as a listener and to let go of our intentions or our, we call it a writing reflex, to try to fix the problem in front of us, to fix the thing that we see in front of us, or to prove ourselves right. That's very tempting to do, but that's not our job. Our job is to listen and to elicit more from that member. I try to maintain a mindset of curiosity, especially when it's something that I personally have a hard time with. That's about me, it's not about them. So when someone is sharing, I don't want to give too many examples, I guess, specific, but something that I find really difficult or that I completely disagree, or even if I think, hey, I don't know if that actually lines up with the values here at the cafe. Not that they've done anything against our guiding principles, but the thing that they've expressed, I'm having a trouble with taking in, you know. I try to get curious about that. Some of the phrases I'll use, like, can you help me understand that a little bit more? That's very interesting, you know. It's very hard to do, so I want to encourage you guys to lean into that. Okay, I've got like 3 more bullets, and then I want to open it up for a little bit. Okay, so going along with our philosophy and the way that we approach folks, to keep in mind that there are many pathways to recovery. We support whatever pathway is going to work for somebody. We support them to try out lots of different pathways. So this includes 12-step programs like AA and NA, and maybe those don't work for somebody, and that's fine. And so we can encourage other forms of support groups or treatment or abstinence only or moderation, harm reduction. This can be hard because we do all have our own belief systems. There is a lot of, let's call it historical context behind, well, not only 12 steps, but that way of approaching people. So similar to listening to someone who has values different from you, we have to be able to hold each member's unique pathway as that's what they need. I'm not here to tell them that's the wrong path, or hey, I've been down that path and there's nothing but blackberry thorns. It's not for us to say. Bruce touched on this earlier, but in any of these conversations that you're having with members, in any of these interactions, if you find yourself feeling uncomfortable, uneasy, uncertain about how to proceed or any of that, listen to those feelings, listen to your gut. And then it is a safe place. There are always staff around. So you just grab a staff person and say, hey, here's what happened. Maybe you don't even understand how you're feeling about it, but just tell us what it is. Or if it's to the level of like, hey, this is what this person said to me, and it's just totally inappropriate. We don't tolerate harassment. We don't tolerate racist, sexist comments, like none of those things. Someone can hold those beliefs, but we do not communicate those here to one another, because it has to be inclusive and safe for everybody who walks in. Okay, so the last bullet then is that what we hope that cafe companions do is be aware of the space, notice who's coming in, notice who's sitting by themselves, notice who always seems to be sitting by themselves. Why would that be? And approach people. This is something that's really uncomfortable for some folks to do. Until I became, I don't know, until I spent a lot of time at the Recovery Cafe, I guess I had a mindset of like, well, maybe they don't want me to approach them. Maybe they don't want to talk to me, maybe, but let's let them tell us. So we like to approach folks and ask them, would you like any company? Can I join you? Or introduce yourself. Hi, I'm Brian. What's your name? Do you mind if I sit with you? This is part of the culture at Recovery Cafe. It's not necessarily that I'll tell members, oh, when you come here, expect that people are going to approach you, but it becomes quite evident early on in your experience here that that's sort of the way that we do things here. So people are very used to that. And also don't take it personally if they say I'd like some privacy. But I do really want our cafe companions to be mindful of the space, aware of who's in it, and making a welcoming introduction. Okay, so I just went down a whole long list of things, and I want to stop for a second. For those of you who have served as cafe companions, I would love to hear if anything you heard was new. And for those of you who are not cafe companions, I would just love to hear, any reactions to any of those things I read out.
I would just mention a couple of things that I've been there, not consistently, but enough to recognize a lot of what you're talking about, Brian. And I think for me, I was very hesitant too, because I tend to be an introvert, but I love to talk to people individually and just hear stories. And I mean, I'm a retired teacher of English and Lit, and so I love everybody's stories. But it really helped me to know that I didn't have to handle all those situations myself, and that there's always staff right there, so that if you get in over your head, you can step aside or excuse yourself for a second and either speak quietly, to that staff member, or saying I need help, or this is beyond me, or something like that. That took a lot of that fear away from me. And then just that noticing your surroundings and what needs to happen, and just that, it was hard for me to go over to somebody that was sitting by themselves, but I found that it was really easy, because they will say, no, I want to be by myself, or yeah, sit down, or those were my two fears, and those were the two that, after you've been there for a day, that you don't have to be afraid of those anymore.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Well, one of the problems I have, there are probably 2 or 3 different people that come in regularly, and it's so hard for me to want to sit with them for a long period of time. So I hesitate to go over to them. I mean, they're just not my kind of people. So I hesitate, and then I feel badly, and then I think, well, I could go over and then try to excuse myself after 10 minutes, but that's hard. So it's an issue for me. Part of me wants to just go in there, have lunch, sit with my friends, and enjoy myself. And that's not why I'm there.
Thank you for that, Jill. No, I really do appreciate that. It's very honest. I appreciate that. I would love to hear from anybody else are you okay with that, Jill? Are you okay with hearing from someone else about this? If anyone has anything to contribute, I've got some thoughts I'll share in a minute, but I'd love to ask others first.
I think it's good to be uncomfortable. I mean, I try to push myself a little bit on that, just to feel sort of uncomfortable, because I don't feel very uncomfortable most of the time. I mean, even my health is pretty good. And I just stubbed my toe, and I'm very aware of my toe. And when I'm feeling socially ill at ease, I'm trying more and more to just go with it and figure out what's going on. And I don't know, I might say, I'm going to sit for 20 minutes. I might try to extend the time a little bit. And anyway, I don't know. I really, I just, and one thing that I could use a lot of help with, and Brian just said, please help me understand that, when somebody hits you with something you don't understand at all, there's so many different things you can say, but I haven't been trained. They don't come naturally. So I would almost love to do role plays, because they're just not coming naturally to me. I mean, I could sit there and feel uncomfortable, that I'm learning to do, but that's not making the other person feel comfortable if I'm uncomfortable. So all those linguistic things I think could be very interesting to do a training on. I know you've done some. Thank you.
I love that, Carol. For me, role playing is the best way to learn, besides then actually going to do the thing. So I'm gonna hold that, and we can. I would want to maybe think of some scenarios, but yeah, I love that idea. Let's see. I saw Bruce unmute for just a hot minute there, if you wanted to contribute, and then Thais, your camera came on, so I wondered if you had something to say too.
Yeah, go ahead, Bruce.
Okay, yeah. I was just thinking, I mean, that issue of being with somebody where I am uncomfortable, that I did find myself running into that. I wouldn't say often, but certainly occasionally in my time at the other cafe. And yeah, it is not an easy thing sometimes to to like say get away or move on. But I guess I've found, I mean, I think, and somebody mentioned about, sitting with the discomfort for a bit, which is something that I sort of forgot about. So it's good to remember that. But I would sometimes, in cases like that, spend some time with the person, and then politely excuse myself by saying, I need to go to, I see so and so across the room or whatever, that I need to go talk to them. And I found that people were, I can't think of a time where somebody said, no, you can't, you can't go do that, or or even was uncomfortable. I'd say, yeah, okay. And and I think it's it's being respectful to their needs as much as I can, but there are times, and there are people that are gonna bug us, and if it is, I guess I do recall having conversations with staff about, a couple times about that with people, because, not only myself to get, a little understanding of like, why am I feeling this way, but also to understand a little better where that person is coming from, because they may, you go and sit down and meet somebody, you may not have any context at all who they are or where they're coming from.
Right.
And I do find it very helpful to have a better understanding from the staff or from people who know that person. Like, what kinds of things are they struggling with? And maybe there is a way I can, understanding a little more about the person, that there may be a way I can connect to them that I wouldn't have thought of otherwise.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah.
Well said. Yeah, thank you, everybody, for those contributions. I don't have a lot to add. I really love what you guys had to say. I had a friend once tell me, when I was struggling to connect with somebody, I was struggling to just like them. I wanted to, but I didn't know I didn't know what it was. And he said, well, you're not going to be friends with everybody, and that is okay. It is okay to have preferences. What I would say is to be aware of what those are. What we don't want is to let those things get in the way of connecting with somebody. Now, I liked too what I heard about exploring those thoughts and feelings. What is that about for me? Where is that coming from? Because it does say much more about you than it does say about that person. There are some days where I am just a little impatient. And I can relate to what you're saying. I'm like, I got like 10 things I got to do right now. And I got to remind myself, like, no, this is why I'm here. This is why we built this place. This is why this program exists, is to be patient and sit down. And so that's my stuff, right? And that's the beauty of the program, is that through this process of being attentive and listening to somebody else, I'm also working through some of my stuff. And that's what that is, right? Is how do I slow down and be present to this when I've got all this other stuff going on up here, And I saw Thais, thank you for your comment there. If you don't mind, I'll just read it for everyone. She said, it's part of our personal growth to work on the comfort zone, and we have to just be kind to our limits too. I like that. Give yourself a little grace, right? We're just human. And at the same time, leaning into some of this for our own personal growth. This is all the philosophy of the cafe. So with that, I have this sheet that I want to share my screen with you guys. I want to give a little context first. There's something called motivational interviewing. It's not a treatment modality, but it is an approach to being present with somebody. It's based in the idea that there is how would you call it? A cycle through which someone goes through change. There's a different level of readiness to change that someone might have. It still allows that person to decide, is this a change I want to make or not? And it allows us to recognize that this isn't about overcoming denial or confronting resistance. It's about honoring, as Bruce said earlier, where is this person at right now? And so our job is this set of motivational interviewing skills and approaches and ways of being with somebody, applying that to the situation, this person that we have in front of us, to help them move along the stages of change, to get to whatever place they want to get to with their own personal growth. So I'm going to share this screen that has, it's called Motivational Interviewing Core Skills. So it's got a quote here from the two people who developed this, Miller and Rolnick. It's called Enhancing Intrinsic Motivation to Change by Exploring and Resolving ambivalence. And I don't mean to assume anything, but I'll just define ambivalence real quick, which is sometimes I feel like making the change and sometimes I don't feel like making the change. And then anywhere in between that. So the motivational interviewing spirit, that's what it says here, demonstrating the MI spirit. It encourages ownership, enhances self-efficacy, and assumes competency. Part of the reason I love this is because it is all within the same philosophy that we have at Recovery Cafe. In fact, some of the philosophy was adopted from this approach. That last part, assuming competency, everybody's the expert on their own story. They're the expert on their recovery. They're the expert on where they've been and where they want to go. When we assume competency, that's to say, I believe this person has everything they need to already in order to make whatever change it is to get there. What this brings up for me is, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Paulo Freire, who wrote a book called The Pedagogy of the Oppressed, among many others. He was a Brazilian activist and philosopher. He talks about in that book, the banking model of education. There's a lot of assumptions made behind this. What he means by the banking model of education is me, the person with power, the teacher, the educator, I am here to deposit knowledge into somebody else, the student, because they are deficient in some way. They don't have the skills, they don't have the knowledge, they don't have what it takes to get to where it is they want to go. The assumptions behind that are that I'm all powerful, I've got what they need, I'm holding the keys. If only this poor soul had what I had, then they would be able to move on in their life. There's so much wrong about this. Not least of which is just that the power dynamics that exist in our culture are largely arbitrary, largely based on things that are totally outside of our control, that happen at birth and are then perpetuated and reified as we go through life. So what we are trying to do here is we're assuming, no, it is not about that. It's not about me giving someone else the thing that I have because they don't have it. It's saying this person is totally capable of doing it. I might just be the good sounding board to help them along this process of change. So some of these things that it has underneath here are sort of balancing sort of these old ways of thinking and this new way of thinking. Respecting their autonomy versus exerting authority. Collaborating with them rather than confronting them. Evoke from them, draw out from them rather than educating, depositing, and exploring with them rather than explaining. I would love to hear any thoughts about just that first section.
Here I am. I'm Brazilian, so this really resonates with me. I love Paulo Freire, and I also have an 8-year-old, and I feel like since I became a mom, this has been really a focus of everything in my life is that power dynamic, and also that we grew up and that's how we learned to be, right? To respect authority in this way, like they know, you don't. And in any conflict resolution, once you take that, that exactly is where the magic happens, because you don't know better than anybody. You know better than anybody, even though you've never been that place. So yeah, I love that you included that.
Well said, Thais, thank you.
Thank you. I was going to say, Brian, this is what I hold when, with Jill's question about what do you do if you see somebody that's sitting alone and you're not, they're not your type, they're not your people, you have those reservations. One of the things that has helped me is to do exactly those things that we just talked about in that first level. Is just that you don't go over as if you know everything. You just that curiosity and all of that stuff comes out. And really, when I've done this in the cafe, the thing that's so astonishing to me is it doesn't take very long before I am just amazed at what they're thinking, where they are, what they've done, where they're headed. I mean, they always surprise me in such a positive way. So it doesn't, I've never felt that, how do I get out of this situation? I've always felt like, oh, tell me more. It's the fun part for me.
Awesome. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
So, go ahead.
Oh, excuse. Were you going to say something, Brian?
Go ahead, Bruce.
Well, I was just thinking of a couple of things. One, a couple of approaches to, I don't know, inviting people to recovery or whatever. I mean, in the past, going back to, I'm a 12-step person. That's how I got here. But I don't know, some years ago, I started thinking, what's the state of the art in addiction research, and where are things at, and what beliefs am I holding that I shouldn't hold, or that are no longer valid? And one of them is this idea of somebody's got to hit bottom before they're going to get there. And when I first read about motivational interviewing, I was sort of saying, well, that's not necessarily the case. It's probably not something that that I'm going to be very helpful with, but I think still the ideas of giving them their autonomy and their freedom to choose what they want, rather than saying, you've got to do this. I mean, I think there is a thing in the recovery community. You've got to do this the way I did it, or it's not going to work. And yeah, I've seen people, recover all kinds of ways. And that, but that really almost reflects my own insecurity about, where I'm at. And I guess the other thing that this really negates is this idea of, I got clean and sober in Minnesota and years ago, and in Minnesota, like Hazelden and other places, were models of addiction treatment back then. But one of the things they started doing was interventions, which then became a reality TV show and all this. And interventions really are, they're exerting authority, they're confronting, they're pushing, you do this or else. And it's always seemed to me to be flawed. But in understanding this, I realize why I think it's a flawed way to approach the whole problem. It feels good. I have family members all over the place with addiction problems and all that, and I've been in that place. You got to do this, you got to do this, and I love you too much to whatever let you do what you're doing, but I have no way of controlling what you're doing. Anyway, that's a little off topic, but those are the two areas that this, I think, is really, really useful for.
Thank you, Bruce. So recognizing we only have 10 minutes left, and I could talk about this all day long, there's a few things that I want to highlight and kind of leave us with, and then kind of leave open for our subsequent trainings. The two things then I want to highlight are these opening strategies, they call them here. These to me are the skills that we can use for how to listen. How do we elicit from somebody? As it says here, it creates a safe environment for disclosure and creative exploration when we ask open-ended questions, so that they can't just be answered by a yes or no, which to me, I think, demonstrates curiosity. I want to learn more. I don't even need to tell you that because I'm asking you this question, which is then implied that I want to learn more. When we provide affirmation, so that's when someone is telling us that they feel a certain way, and we validate that in them, or we validate the story they've shared with us. Wow, that sounds really hard. Or how amazing, I'm so glad for you. That sounds really exciting. And then we reflect. So someone's shared us something with us, and to make sure that I am understanding what they're actually trying to tell me, I will repeat it back in my own words to them. So then we're all on the same page. Okay, all right, now that we've understood, I can continue telling my story. And the last one is summaries. This might be after a good long conversation. It's similar to a reflection, but we might be like more so condensing it down. We have to be careful with reflecting sometimes, but sometimes what we want to reflect to someone is some of the unspoken stuff. They may not tell you the feeling that they had when they're telling you a story. If they said, this guy was such a jerk to me, he wouldn't let me do this or that when I was down at the grocery store, you know. Well, this person never told me how they were feeling, but I can put myself in their shoes and say, wow, that sounds alienating. That sounds frustrating. I think I would be pretty upset about that. And then they'll say, well, yeah, duh, I'm feeling upset too, right? The other thing I think people get a little bit nervous about is, well, what if I'm wrong when I'm reflecting something back to them? Are they going to be upset with me because I got it wrong? I say, nobody's ever been upset with me when I've tried to engage with them and say, oh, wow, that sounds really upsetting. And they go, no, it was hilarious. You should have seen it. I'm like, oh, okay. Oh, I guess that was funny. All right. By me reflecting, I am engaging. I have listened up until that point. I put my own filters on things because that's what we all do. And they will correct you. And I've literally never had the experience that someone has been upset when I've offered a reflection that was incorrect. In fact, it just lets us better get connected and on the same page about this conversation. Okay, so this part here, I'm going to send this with you guys later, and I would love for you to read them. These are the kind of do's and don'ts, ways of being with somebody, avoid power struggles, right? I do think that's important, but we only have a few minutes. This here, eliciting and exploring change talk and responding to sustained talk. Change talk is when we hear somebody ready to make a change, when they're saying, man, this really isn't working out for me. I've been wondering about some other ways. So this is our opening, right? This is very exciting. Someone's ready to make a change. That's wonderful. So we don't offer solutions, right? We're not going to tell the person, oh, you should try this, you know, say, no. They say, oh, I'm really interested in change. You go, oh, that's interesting. Tell me more about that. Or what kind of things do you have in mind? What have you tried before? What's worked for you? And then responding to sustained talk. Sustained talk is when someone is saying, I don't want to make a change. I don't think it's ever going to work. And so what the questions I would ask somebody in that situation is I don't want to reinforce the negativity, the sustained talk. I don't want to reinforce that. So instead of reflecting some of those things, what I would ask them is, have there been any times where you haven't felt this, where you felt differently about this situation? Have there been times where you have been successful making a change in your life? When we can help tie someone back to a success that they've had, it improves their self-efficacy. They can say, oh, that's right. I have done this before. And then often something that I will leave people with after we come around to a conversation at the end, and it's sounding like, okay, all right, so maybe they're not so much in sustained talk anymore. I might leave off with something like, you know what? I wouldn't be surprised if the next time I saw you, you've made this change. What am I telling this person? I'm telling them, of course you're capable of doing it, you know? It wouldn't even be surprising. It would be fantastic, sure, right? But it, to me, is honoring what we talked about earlier here. It's the competency. It's that you're the expert, you know, you're perfectly capable of doing this. You don't need me to help you do it. I don't need to give you anything. You've already got it. I did see in the chat there request for motivational interviewing training. I think it's a great idea. There's so much that we can get into with this stuff, and I might invite one of my colleagues in the community to come do that for us. So thanks for that suggestion. So in the last like 4 minutes, any responses to the training overall, or just those last couple bits? I'd love to hear.
I have a question, comment, and when you, this last bit that you said, sometimes you say, oh, I'm sure you can do it, and or I bet you get there, or something like that. This sometimes, like, for me, this is a personal thing. Sometimes I feel like people want to say that. I feel even worse because I'm not able to do it because I've been saying I'm going to do this change, and I know I'm perfectly capable of it, but I still can't do it. So every time I hear that, gets me even more irritated. So so I don't know if there's any other suggestions, or if just me, or if we encounter a situation like that, like me, say, yeah, but I don't, how did you follow up that?
No, that's great feedback. A lot of this stuff is, it depends. I would hopefully have gotten to that point with you in the conversation to know that, like, that's not going to be the right thing to say at the end of this conversation. Housing is another great example. The issue of housing in our community is so insurmountable, and it's so outside of our control. I'm not going to use that phrase with someone who's struggling to find housing. So context dependent. Yeah, but thank you for that.
Brian, before we leave, I just want to say, if you haven't been physically to the cafe, I'd put that at the top of my list, because when you walk in there, it's just this. If everybody, when I walked in, it was like, if the world had places like this for people like us, we wouldn't have world problems. It's just this healing, loving, there's no shame, no judgment. You don't have to worry about making a mistake. It's just this freeing, beautiful space. So just walk through the door.
Thanks, Jan. Well, I think that's a great note to end on. The invitation is open to all of you. If you've felt inspired and would like to sign up to do a shift or a regular thing as a cafe companion, send me a message and let me know. If you're not sure and you're like, okay, maybe let me see what it's like first, just come on over and join us. Lunch on Thursdays, noon to 3, breakfast on Fridays, 10 to noon. If you feel safer and would just like to get a tour one-on-one, I'm happy to show you around and we can talk more. So with that, I'll say thank you, everybody. I'll send the recording out afterward with some of the resources we discussed, and I appreciate you all. Hope to see you all soon.
Thank you, Brian.